Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Devin Dickinson with Lauren once again, and today we're going to talk about risk taking.
Yes.
Everyone's blood pressure just go up a little bit. Yeah.
Got a little sweaty.
Yeah.
So I want to start off today. I think we can probably safely say that you have in your career lost more money than most people would be comfortable with. But you sit here very successful. So I want to talk about that idea of takes money to make money, or you've got to take risks in your life, whether it be business or personal, in order to make to get where you want to be.
Yeah, that did kind of make me I was kind of doing the math in my head, and in all honesty, to put it in perspective, it probably has been in the millions, that we've lost. But I think that is kind of par for the course, right? I'm not saying that that's everybody's experience, but I'm a risk taker. I've probably always been a risk taker. My parents, even today, worry about me. They're like, we love you, we just don't understand you. And but I've been a risk taker, and I've been sometimes educated risk, and sometimes reckless, and sometimes no brainers. I think over the years I've learned to discipline myself in risk taking, but it is part of business. If you're an entrepreneur, or you're someone that's really trying to start a business or to grow a business, you have to take risks. And especially just the step one, right, is probably the biggest risk you're ever going to take. But by nature, entrepreneurs are risk takers, and you have to get comfortable with it, and you also have to be disciplined around it, and that's a balance.
Perfect. So let's start off, set the stage. What was the first big risk you ever took in your life, and what did you learn from it?
Good risk or bad risk, or because it's funny. I'll tell a story a little bit. So I was when I was younger, my friend and I went to the horse track. I know we're talking about business risk, right? But this will tell you kind of about my mindset, is that I wanted to gamble, wanted to bet or whatever, and unfortunately we won the first time we went, because we were dumb and lucky, and we won, and I kind of was like, "Ooh, this is great," right? And so immediately I kind of got this whole risk-taking mindset. I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur as well, right? But this kind of is going on inside my head of risking reward, risk and reward. Now, thank God I actually was really terrible at the horses, so I lost a bunch of money, and I'm like, okay, I'm out, right? But I had this mindset going in of going, okay, it takes money to make money. And again, this podcast is not about gambling. Please do not gamble. But it showed that I was there, right? I had the mindset to gamble, and so and to take risks. And so I would start little companies, right, when I was younger with anything that I had. And so that meant that I had to finance it myself. So when I was in college, I delivered pizzas, and I started a business. And all the money that I made basically delivering pizzas went into this business. So not only did I not make money, but I lost money along the way. And that was true with many of my first endeavors, right? Is that almost all of my first endeavors, I did not make anything. In fact, I actually had to put money into it. But each one I learned, and I learned, and I learned. And so there wasn't necessarily a moment in time where I decided to wake up and put it all on black. I had kind of developed a mindset of, going from gambling with the horses, to kind of making strategic bets in business. Many of them would not pay off. Some of them paid off a little, but mostly we ended up breaking even. But I knew that if I continued to learn and continued to grow, that eventually something would happen. And so probably the moment in time when I made my biggest gamble was I was actually working in corporate America, and I had been toying around for years with starting, going out and striking out on my own. As life would have it, I actually got offered the big job, the big one that I had been waiting for and working really hard for 4 or 5 years. And I got the offer. And so it was a big paycheck. It was all these wonderful perks. It was corporate office. It was, what you'd want in life. And I actually walked away from that big paycheck, company car, all of the perks, it was a lot of money at the time, to go and make zero. And not only make zero, but to invest. And so that was probably the moment of my biggest proportionate risk that I ever took.
How did you have the strength to go out and do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I was so nervous. And we would talked about this before. Like, I think people would say, "Oh, well, you made the right decision." I don't know if I made
It's somewhat easy to say that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the time you didn't. you
Yeah,
know?
and it was a good decision, right? But it's not to say that my other decision was wrong. And this is one of the things I really want people to understand in this podcast. There's not a right and a wrong answer, right? Like, God can bless our path, whatever path we choose, right? And I think a lot of times we think there's one path that he has for us and that's it. And honestly, I think God gives us lots of paths, right? As long as we're not walking in sin and as long as we're really giving our best for him, I don't think you can make a wrong answer, right? And so in the evidence of this, to go back to your question, how did I get comfortable with that and have the courage to do it? I was scared to death and I was waiting for God to open up the heavens and tell me do this, right? I was waiting for that moment. And that didn't happen because I had to give an answer on Monday. And so I decided we had this church that I went to had like a 7 a.m., 9 a.m., and then like 11. I told my wife, I'm going to go to the 7 a.m. and I'm going to sit in church. And I feel like God always speaks to me, especially in big decisions. Like I feel like he speaks to me through my devotional, through prayer life or at church. And I just hadn't heard one way or the other whether I should do it or not. So I told her, I got the solution. I'm going to go at 7 a.m. I'm going to sit there and I'm going to listen just to the voice of God. And by the time I walk out at noon, I'm going to have an answer. And I said, if I have to stay there the whole day, well, sure enough, noon came. I didn't have any clarity. Not any more clarity than when I went in before.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you know what? God's telling me whatever I decide.
Mhm.
Like, what do I want to do?
Mhm.
And I really believe God gives us that. Like, if we're not living in sin, like I said, we're putting him first. We're asking him. And he's like, I really felt like he's like, well, what do you want to do, Devin?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I want to go and I want to strike out on my own. And he's like, okay, well, it's going to be tough, right? But had I chose to stay with the company, I don't think that would have been a terrible decision.
Yeah.
I think God would have blessed that path, right? And so, like, would he have blessed it in different ways? Probably. Would my path have looked different? Probably. But I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. And so, but for me, that was the moment I had the courage to strike out on my own. And it was terrifying, not for a moment, but it was terrifying for years. For years. And and we've talked about this, like, you say, well, Devin, you should have had faith or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I guess I did have enough faith to go do it. But I don't want to tell you that I wasn't scared. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think when David ran into Goliath that he wasn't scared. I mean, I don't have hair today because of those first probably 4 years of being in business. It was terrifying, and it rightfully so, because I didn't make money, right?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't make money. My wife supported me. And so all of that was a risk. Had I taken the left path, there would have been risk associated with that too, right? Because I would have had to move to corporate, right?
Yeah.
And you are trusting your hands in other people, right?
Yeah.
Because you're always going to have a boss,
Yeah.
right? Like, no matter what, if you work for someone, you always have a boss. So there's risk in that, right? So, but like, I don't feel like it was necessarily a right or a wrong answer, but God bless the path that I chose.
So tell me about a risk you took that didn't work out.
Yeah, I mean, you want the alphabetically, numerically. I mean, there's so many things that I've done. One time I counted up that I've actually started over probably somewhere in the teens, that I've tried. And I've had, I think 5 or 6 that have been successful.
Okay.
A few that have been very, very, very successful, but probably 6 that have been successful. So less than a 50% success rate. Each of those was a bit of a gamble and an investment, right? The ones that didn't work out, I lost money on, like legit money. One of them I remember, and I think I've referenced before, I had $500,000 in before I made a single penny, and I actually never made a single penny off that. And that was legit $500,000 of cold hard cash, just gone, right? But I do feel like each of these losses risks have been falling forward.
Okay.
And it's one of the things I teach with my team. Now, we have a big game tonight, and we're going to win tonight. It's number 1 versus number 2, in case you're wondering. So by the time this releases, we'll still be number 1, God willing. But so I always teach my team, I'm like, even if we lose, in the games that we lose, we probably learn more than the games that you win. And that's true in business, right? Because it forces you, like the pain of it, forces you to learn. And so, I said I've probably started in the teens, a number of companies, and in most all of them, in some way, I learned something that I fell forward, progressed in. One company that was moderately successful, we got it probably up to, I think at the height, it was like $3 million, but it was never doing what I wanted it to do. But it was a moderately successful company. I took that and I evolved it into what now has been my most successful company, And so I think a lot of times people go, well, I'm not satisfied with where this is at, or we're losing money, or we're doing what? And so they just kind of like shut the doors on it and just quit rather than learning from those mistakes. And I think that's what happens. Like people that gamble money, that's what they're doing. Like they're gambling. They either win or they lose, right? And then they're on the next thing. Versus people that are kind of investing and taking thoughtful risks are always learning, right? Because you go, hey, I lost here. How can I change and how can I win? How can I win? How can I evolve? How can I grow? And that's what I've been able to do, I feel like, over the years. And that's why I said, like, God doesn't, he talks about blessing your past, right? In Proverbs, he doesn't talk about, I'm going to teleport you from here to the promised land, right? Like he blesses that path that you're on. And that path is typically not straight, right? It's got bob and weave and ups and downs and hills and valleys and peaks and lows and challenges and all the things along the way. And if we hit these moments where we go, oh, I don't like the way this path looks, and we just quit on it, I feel like we're kind of quitting on our destiny instead of learning. Now, I'm not going to tell you, there aren't some times when, you get you run into that door, right? Like that door is closed and he's telling you, hey, go left or go right. But like, we have to have we have to think about that and pray about that and understand it and analyze it and talk to people and learn, when is that door hard shut? And he's telling me to take, turn around and do a U-turn, or he's telling me just go left or right? And I think that's the path that we're talking on. So when I think about the money that I've lost, I don't have heartburn because I think about those where, that was me paying to learn. And I feel like when you go into that with that mindset as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as someone who's pursuing their dreams, it's like investing in your future kind of.
Quick side question there, because something you mentioned made me think. You talked about like analyzing your mistakes or learning from your failures, but how when we win, we don't necessarily do that. We kind of are like, oh, great, this was good. We're going to, we look at maybe what helped it. Do you think people would benefit more from digging into also what helped us win?
Absolutely. So in my companies, one of the things that we have is in a month, which forces us, we take 2 to 3 days for each company, and they sit down and you're forced to go, where did we win and where did we lose? If we won, why did we win? And how do we win more? How do you win bigger, right? Like, hey, we won. This is great. And there was plenty of times in my career when I was winning and didn't even recognize I was winning. Had I known I was winning, I would have invested more in those areas, right? Like I would have given that more focus. And I think, as a side note, so many of us do this where we give all of our attention to the negative things in our life instead of the positive things. And this isn't just financially, but, when you think about people in your company, the people, those 20% of the people that are negative influences are taking 80% of your time, versus the 80%, the 8 people that are doing great, you're giving them 20% of your time. Like, and we have to change how we think about that, right? So instead of, giving those folks your time, give the people the time that are like doing great, right? And let them double and triple, right? And so the same thing in our business, right? Like look at where our businesses are succeeding and figure out how to grow those even more. And if you're going to take risk and you're going to invest, less invest over there in what's working instead of pouring money and investing in something that's not working, right? Sometimes the best thing is amputate it, right? Like cut that off, right? Instead of pouring more money at it. So, but it's a hard thing to do because you get pot committed, right? You know that expression, like when you're playing poker or whatever, you're pot committed. And so like, you're like, oh, I need to continue to throw money at it to fix this thing. No, maybe you just need to, fold, fold and go invest over here, you know?
How do you look at risk and evaluate whether it's worth it or not?
So risk in the companies, I really I don't like to do anything that I don't think is going to be more than 5x, right? So if I put $1 in, lifetime value is going to get me 5x more, right? And that lifetime can't be 20 years, right? I don't want to wait 20 years to get my 5, but typically 6-7 years get 5 times off of $1, right? And so that's how I personally evaluate our own risk. And there's we are growth companies. We're known for growth. We're known for, really trying to drive the top line. The problem is you can drive the top line and you can grow, but you're not getting good return on investment. And so constantly kind of having this barometer of trying not to do anything that's not going to at least get you 5x is a good safety guard, right? Because if you hit 5x and you only hit, 3x, okay, that's great. But if you're shooting for 3x and you hit 1.5x, like you're just basically, you're not even probably breaking even from a cash flow standpoint. So I think for us internally, we always try not to do something that's at least 5x. Now, me personally, so that's what I train my CEOs. Like my CEOs, like that's how I want them to think. And right now, some of them are even taking it higher. Like, hey, I actually don't even want to do it unless it's 10x. And I think that's a good mindset too. But you have to get comfortable with the growth patterns of each of your companies. Now, for me personally, what I've done personally, how do I decide what's worth my time? I kind of have figured out what I make in a year, right? And what my time is actually worth. And then when it comes time to business, like doing stuff that's business, unless I'm going to make X amount of dollars, right? Like, so it's not worth my time, right? So like, now it doesn't mean from a financial standpoint, now it doesn't mean that there's not things that are intrinsically more valuable than dollars. So for me, coaching is intrinsically more valuable than dollars. Coaching costs me way more. Coaching costs me money, right? Now I'm not talking about my time value of money, but like but intrinsically, I feel like it's what God has called me to do, right? Yeah. So there's things that God has called you to do in your life that I think, you kind of do, period, right? That's just who I am. That's what I do. Now, if it comes down to a financial decision, like, hey, Devin, are you willing to invest in this company? Hey, Devin, would you like to go and be a board member of this, right? And I look at it and go, is there something intrinsic that God's just called me to do that? And if the answer is no, it's purely a financial decision, I'll look and go and I'll say something like, all right, my time is like $40,000 a day. Am I going to make over $40,000 a day? I'll do it. If it's not, I'm not going to do it. Right. Like, so there's things in my life that I just kind of, and now that's me at 53.
Yeah.
Now me at 25, my time value was like $200 a day. Right. Like, what am I going to do that is worth my time? And so as I think about that, and hopefully this helps you, you kind of put it and go, okay, that is going to help me to quit from risking time, taking time, doing things that I shouldn't be doing, because you reach these points in your life where you go, I want to do everything, but you shouldn't do everything. Sometimes having that discipline, and that's when you avoid recklessness.
So dig into that more. What do you think the difference? How would you define risk versus recklessness? Because I think a lot of people probably think of it as the same thing.
I have been reckless in my life, financially reckless, reckless with my time, and it's painful. Like it's painful losing money. It's painful giving away your time that you shouldn't have. All of those have consequences. And so for me, like when I have not had the discernment of like the principles where I've said, principally, if this is just a financial reason, the only reason I'm getting involved in this company is financially, then it's got to hit these principles. Otherwise, I'm just being reckless because I think I can do anything every time, anything all the time, and I'm always right. And I always win my bets, right? And that's not true, right? So, and then also truly being prudent with your investigation, right? Like if you're investing money into something, like you really need to understand it to the very intimate degree. And so, I get pitched companies all the time. And I run them through the basic analysis in my head where, number one, I really want to understand the financials and see where this company's going. Is it going up and to the right? And even if it is, like, what's my return on investment? Am I going to hit those minimum numbers of my requirements for my time and my investment? And if I don't, it's a hard no. I just walk away, like, wish them the best. Now, if it's a friend, I feel like I've been called to help. Now, all of a sudden, the money doesn't matter, right? And so I think avoiding those things, having the discipline around what you're going to invest in, what you're not going to invest in, versus, what you've been called to do in your life. And that will avoid you being reckless with your time and your money. And what happens is, and you see this, like in the world's best entrepreneurs, we get cocky and prideful. And you start to think that you're always right and you never lose a bet. And so like you start to think like this is very common right now in 2025. There's all these angel investment groups.
Yeah.
Like, I got to be honest with you, I haven't met any of them that I've been impressed with. Like I stumble across them all the time, and the people are like, I find out what they are is they're doctors and dentists and lawyers and stuff that are financially successful. And so they put their money in these angel funds and they call it this such and such group, and they have a couple advisors. And all of a sudden, just because they're a brilliant brain surgeon, doesn't mean jack crap about software development. And they lose their money. Like, that's what company I looked at last week. I literally was like, we were talking about this before. I looked at their financials, and I'm like, I guarantee this company is losing $2 million, right? Sure enough, they lost over $2 million, right? And I'm looking at this going, and I'm like, I bet this is a bunch of angel investors that somehow got pitched on software, and and I'm looking at their financials. I'm looking at what they pay for everything, and I'm going, there's no way that anyone that understands software development, no way that anyone that understands a real business is going to continue to throw this money at this thing year after year after year. I said, it's got to be a group of angel investors. Sure enough, that's what it was, right? And people start to think like, oh, I'm rich, therefore I'm smart. Well, you are smart. You're a smart brain surgeon. You don't know software development, right? And even me, like, I'm good at what I do, but it doesn't mean I'm good at all business.
Yeah.
Like, I can't go in and consult for most businesses. I have opinions. I can do pattern recognition. I have some things that I probably know more than the next person, but like, I'm not going to put my money in something unless I truly, truly understand it. And I think that's where people do. And so what happens, people think they're investors and really they're gamblers. Really, they should take that money and go to Vegas and put it on black because they know as much, they're as likely for that to come, actually probably more likely because you're 50-50-ish or 48, 52 to come up on black versus you're going to win in this investment of some software that you have no idea how it works and who the end users are and what the competition is and all of the idiosyncrasies that go in behind this stuff.
So let's look at the other end. What would you say to somebody who says, I'm not a risk taker?
Yeah. I get this so many times, right? Where people are like, they talk to me and we're great friends and they're like, yeah, Devin, I got to be honest with you. I'm just not a risk taker. And they'll say it like they're apologizing, right? Like that it's a character flaw or that it's even worse, a sin, or they feel guilty because they're not a risk taker. And I'm like, that's a gift. Like my gift is being able to take risks and hopefully do them well, right? But like there's a lot of, you lose your hair, right? Like there's a lot of difficult things on this side, right? Yeah. Like there's certainly blessings and there's certainly upside to this, but there's downside too. And then people who aren't risk takers, they don't have probably the stress or the anxiety that I do. And, there's different things that are blessings on that side. And I'm like, dude, don't apologize because you're not a risk taker. Like that's a character, that's a strength if you allow it to be, right? Like lean into that, right? Like don't feel like, well, I can never do this or that because I'm not a risk taker. No, lean into what you are. So my college roommate and I are great friends, and it's known each other for 30 some years. And he is like not a risk taker. We were just out, we were with each other maybe about a month ago hanging out. I think it was a little bit before Christmas, and just had the best night just talking. He literally is on, I think, his like third PhD, and this one he got from Harvard. And I'm not exaggerating. This is exactly, but he is not a risk taker at all. And he would tell you, I'm not a risk taker. And he says it almost apologetically. I'm like, dude, look what you are though, right? Like, you're analytical. You're someone who's like very academic focused, someone who literally, like when Obamacare, that whatever this was, the 7,000 pages, he's the one who read that, right? Like, so like he actually has spoke like in congressional, Senate, whatever subcommittees, right? Like, I'm like, that's what you are though. Like, and like lean into that. And he has, right? That's why he's got like his third PhD, right? But like don't think about like, I'm not going to be who I could be because I'm not a risk taker. No, you can totally be, because you're not going to lose the money, right? Yeah. Like, you're going to do smart things and lean into that. Like my parents were not risk takers. Both of them worked the same job for 35 years, and they leaned into it, and they took their excess money and they were frugal and they invest and they did amazing things, and they're financially above probably their dreams would ever be, right? And they had a wonderful life, and they were not risk takers, but they didn't feel guilty for not being a risk taker, right? And so I would just say, lean into who God's called you to be, right? Yeah. Don't apologize or always think that the grass is greener on the other side, because there's plenty of times in my life where I'm like, I have this like checkout button, like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. It's too stressful, right? Like, like it's too much. Like, and I look at the other side and go, oh, I wish I wasn't a risk taker, but this is who God's called me to be.
Yeah. Okay. So one last question to end the podcast. What advice would you give to someone today who hasn't taken a risk, is about to take their first risk, or is thinking about taking their first risk?
Sometimes I'm so risk-taking and ADD that I've joked, and I'm not trying to be morbid or, irreverent, but I would have been the one on that submarine going to the Titanic, right? Because I'm just like, oh, cool, count me in, let's go, right? And that's the thing. I need to personally take the time to research, believe, do things, right? Like I was talking about, I wouldn't do that in business, but I'd probably hop on that. So personally, I'd probably do that, but right. Yeah. So I think understanding your strengths and weaknesses, right? And if you know that you're just someone who's like, hey, I'm all in all the time, right? Like, you need to get disciplined. You need to get disciplined around your decision making. You need to fully vet out everything that you're doing. So over the years, I've gotten more and more and more and more disciplined about my decision making, my risk taking. So I will, if I feel like it's a bad risk that I've taken, I will cut off earlier, right? Mm-hmm. If I feel like there's something where like it's going the right way, but it just needs more time, I'll put measures in place. Like, okay, well then it has to do this by then. And I think that's what people need to do. Like, if you're about to take that risk, you're about to be an entrepreneur, you're about to start the business, put together that business plan, right? Like, the business plan should get in. And if you're like, well, I have it, in my head, don't start a business. Like, if you're not disciplined enough to sit down and actually put together a real business plan, if you're not going to take the time to do that, you're not going to be disciplined enough to run a great business, right? Like, so go and look at that business plan and then stress test it. Run some pilots against it before you go all in, or you throw good money after bad. Like, you have to put together the business plan, and then in it you have to have checks and balances, right? Like, you can't say like, oh, it's a 2-year business plan. In 2 years, I'm going to make, we're going to be making millions. Well, what does it look like after 3 months? Are you on track? Are you not? And if you're not, be prepared to change or pull the plug or change or do whatever you need to do. And so I would say, rigorous discipline around your risk taking.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thanks. I hope this helped. If you're listening to this, you probably have that affinity towards risk taking. Try to lose less money than I did.